There's one thing that separates people who continuously grow from people who stay stuck in the same patterns for decades. It's not intelligence, it's not ambition, it's not discipline or motivation or any of the things you've been told matter most. It's something so fundamental that without it, nothing else works. You can read every book, take every course, set every goal, and still end up exactly where you are today. Because evolution isn't about what you know, it's about what you're willing to confront. And most people will go their entire lives without ever doing the one thing that makes real growth possible. By the end of this video, you'll understand what that thing is, and more importantly, you'll understand why you've been avoiding it and what it's costing you. But I need to warn you, this isn't going to be comfortable, because what I'm about to reveal requires you to look at something most people spend their entire lives running from. Let's start with what everyone believes about personal evolution. You've been told that if you want to grow, you need to learn more, consume more content, get more skills, build better habits, work harder, be more disciplined. So you do all of that. You read the books, you watch the videos, you follow the advice, you implement the strategies, and some things change, temporarily. Then you slide back to your old patterns, your old behaviors, your old results. And you can't figure out why. You had the information, you had the motivation, you tried to change, but somehow you ended up right back where you started. Here's what nobody tells you. Information doesn't create transformation. Action doesn't create evolution. Even changing your behaviors doesn't guarantee growth. Because if you don't change the lens through which you see reality, you'll keep recreating the same reality with different details. Let me prove it to you. Think about a pattern in your life that keeps repeating. Maybe it's relationships. You keep attracting the same type of person who disappoints you in the same ways. Maybe it's career. You keep ending up in situations where you feel undervalued or stuck. Maybe it's health. You keep starting and stopping the same behaviors. Different circumstances, different people, different details. Same pattern. Why? Because the pattern isn't out there in the world. The pattern is in how you see the world. And until you change that, nothing else changes permanently. Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett, neuroscientist at Northeastern University, spent decades studying how the brain constructs reality. Her research reveals something most people never grasp. You don't see reality as it is. You see reality as you are. Your brain is constantly making predictions based on past experiences, then filtering all new information through those predictions. You're not seeing what's actually happening. You're seeing what your brain expects to happen based on your history. That's why this same situation can happen to two people and they'll have completely different experiences. They're not experiencing different realities. They're interpreting the same reality through different lenses. And here's the critical part. If you never examine that lens, if you never question the predictions your brain is making, you'll keep experiencing the same reality over and over, regardless of how much you try to change your circumstances. Now, here's where most people get stuck. They think personal growth means adding things, more knowledge, more skills, more strategies, more discipline, but that's not evolution, that's accumulation. Evolution requires something much more difficult: subtraction. Specifically, subtracting the false beliefs, unconscious patterns, and outdated narratives that are shaping your perception of reality. And most people never do this because it requires the one thing that feels most threatening: honest self-examination. Dr. Tasha Eurich's research on self-awareness revealed something shocking. She studied thousands of people who claimed to be self-aware. When she tested them, only 10 to 15% actually were. The other 85 to 90%? They had elaborate stories about who they were and why they did what they did. But those stories weren't based on reality. They were based on self-protection. Because true self-examination is terrifying. It means looking at the ways you contribute to your own problems, the ways your perception might be distorted, the ways you might be wrong about yourself. Most people would rather blame circumstances, other people, bad luck, or anything external than face the possibility that their own lens is creating the reality they're experiencing. So they stay stuck, not because they lack information or opportunity, but because they lack the courage to look honestly at themselves. This is what prevents evolution. Not lack of knowledge, not lack of effort, lack of honest self-confrontation. Here's what this actually looks like in real life. Someone keeps experiencing conflict in their relationships. Everyone they get close to eventually becomes difficult or disappointing or betrays them. From their perspective, they're the victim of bad luck with people. They just keep choosing wrong. Everyone else is the problem. But if they were willing to honestly examine their lens, they might discover something uncomfortable. They have an unconscious belief that people will eventually abandon them. So they interpret normal human imperfection as evidence of impending abandonment. They create conflict to test loyalty. They push people away before they can be left. The pattern isn't about the people they're choosing, it's about the lens through which they're viewing every relationship. But seeing that requires admitting they're not just the victim in their story, they're also the creator, and that's terrifying. Or take someone who keeps ending up in jobs where they feel undervalued and stuck. From their perspective, they have bad luck with employers. They keep ending up with bosses who don't recognize their worth. The system is rigged against them. But if they were willing to honestly examine their lens, they might discover they have an unconscious belief that they have to prove their worth through struggle, that easy success means they didn't earn it, that being valued means they're not working hard enough. So they unconsciously seek out situations where they can prove themselves through struggle, and they interpret being valued as a sign they should be doing something harder. The pattern isn't about bad employers, it's about an unconscious need to validate their identity through struggle. But seeing that requires admitting they're choosing this, and that feels like self-blame. This is why most people never evolve, not because they can't, because honest self-examination feels like an attack on their identity. So here's the thing you must do if you want to evolve.
You must be willing to question every story you tell yourself about why your life is the way it is. Not just question it casually, really examine it with genuine curiosity, with a willingness to discover you might be wrong. Every time you find yourself saying, "This always happens to me," or "people always," or "I can never," or "that's just how I am," that's a signal. That's your brain running an automatic program based on past data, and that program is creating your current reality. The question is, are you willing to examine that program? Or are you going to defend it because examining it feels threatening? Dr. Chris Argyris at Harvard studied organizational learning and discovered what he called defensive reasoning. When people's core beliefs are challenged, they don't examine those beliefs, they defend them, even when those beliefs are creating the exact problems they're trying to solve. He found this at every level, in relationships, in businesses, in personal development. People would rather be consistently wrong than uncomfortably uncertain, because uncertainty threatens identity, and most people would rather keep a painful identity than risk not knowing who they are. But evolution requires exactly that, the willingness to not know, to question, to be wrong, to discover that the story you've been telling yourself isn't true. Here's how you actually do this. First, identify your repeating patterns. What keeps showing up in your life regardless of how you try to change circumstances. Not the surface details, the deeper pattern. I always end up feeling this way. This type of situation keeps happening. These kinds of people keep appearing. Second, ask yourself the uncomfortable question, how might I be creating this? Not why is this happening to me? That keeps you in victim mode. But how might I be actively participating in creating this pattern? Maybe through your choices. Maybe through your interpretations. Maybe through unconscious beliefs that are filtering reality. This isn't about blame. It's about agency. Because if you're creating it, you can change it. If it's just happening to you, you're powerless. Third, examine your core beliefs about yourself and the world. What do you believe about people, about success, about relationships, about your own worthiness, about what's possible for you? Write them down. Most people have never made their beliefs explicit. They just operate from them unconsciously. Then ask, is this actually true, or is this a story I'm telling myself? Fourth, seek contradictory evidence. Your brain is designed to confirm what you already believe. You have to actively look for information that contradicts your beliefs. If you believe people are untrustworthy, force yourself to look for evidence of trustworthiness. If you believe success requires suffering, look for examples of people who succeeded without suffering. Your brain will resist this. It will explain away contradictory evidence. That's normal. Keep looking anyway. Finally, practice holding multiple perspectives simultaneously. The ability to see situations from different angles without immediately collapsing into one right perspective. Maybe you're right about your interpretation. Maybe the other person's perspective is valid too. Maybe there's a third way of seeing this that neither of you considered. Evolution happens in that space of uncertainty, and the willingness to hold complexity instead of demanding simplicity. This is what separates people who continuously grow from people who stay stuck. The people who grow are willing to be wrong, to question themselves, to examine their own lens instead of just blaming what they're seeing through it. The people who stay stuck defend their perspective, blame circumstances, insist their story is the only truth. Same information, same opportunities, completely different trajectories. Because one group is willing to evolve their lens, the other group is protecting it. Here's what changes when you actually do this. Your relationships transform because you stop recreating the same dynamics with different people. You start seeing people as they actually are instead of as your past predicts them to be. Your career evolves because you stop unconsciously seeking situations that confirm your beliefs about yourself. You start creating opportunities based on possibility instead of limiting stories. Your entire experience of life shifts because you're no longer trapped in patterns created by outdated beliefs. You're responding to what's actually happening instead of what you expect to happen. You become the kind of person who continuously evolves because you're not defending who you were. You're discovering who you're becoming. And that discovery never ends because there's always another layer, always another belief to examine, always another lens to refine. The people who achieve the most remarkable transformations aren't the ones with the most resources or advantages. They're the ones with the most courage to honestly examine themselves, to question their own stories, to challenge their own beliefs, to discover they might be wrong about things they were certain were true. That's the thing you must do if you want to evolve. Not learn more, not work harder. Honestly examine the lens through which you're seeing reality, because that lens is creating your reality. And until you're willing to look at it, nothing fundamentally changes. Here's what I want you to do right now. Think about one pattern in your life that keeps repeating. Write it in the comments. Make it visible. Share that story. Make it explicit. Because once you can see it, you can examine it. And once you can examine it, you can change it. Subscribe to this channel if you're ready to stop defending your perspective and start evolving it. If you're ready to grow through honest self-examination instead of just accumulating more information. Evolution isn't about becoming someone new. It's about removing the distortions that prevent you from seeing who you actually are and what's actually possible. See you in the next video.